practicing random acts of kindness at scale, mobilizing the biggest all-volunteer organization in Los Angeles, California, and how we can do well by doing good. All right. Joey Ramone said, hey ho, let's go. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Welcome to another awesome episode of Legends and Losers. And man, am I so glad that you could join us today. We have an extraordinary guest today, an inspiring man, a guy that I'm so glad to have gotten to know. And I'm looking forward to spending time with for a very long time. His name is Tom Bagamane. And Tom is an extraordinary leader and really is a guy who's dedicated his life to giving back and to helping companies give back. And I'll get to more on Tom in just a second. Tom being in LA, I wanted to just underscore some things we have going on here at Legends and Losers with episode number 62 with sitting Superior Court Judge for Los Angeles County in Compton, California, Judge Kelvin Filer. And if you haven't heard that episode of Legends and Losers, I'm going to use a word I don't use very often. I beg you to go listen to episode 62 with Judge Filer. We've set a BHAG here at Legends and Losers for that episode to get to 1 million downloads. And we got a long way to go. And here's why I'd like that episode to be heard 1 million times and like you to share it 1 million times. At a time when the news could make you want to, pull the cover under your head, over your head, or put a fist through somebody's face, or somewhere in between, Judge Filer restored my faith in the American dream and in a lot of ways in humanity. And it's a very powerful episode, and it's also a testament to the power of podcasting. Judge Filer was kind enough to be generous in sharing his life story, how his father, Maxie Filer, was the founder of the NAACP chapter in Compton, California, and how Judge Filer and really his whole family have dedicated their lives to community service and to social justice. And he talks about everything from what it's like to be the sitting judge in a murder trial to his love of karaoke and how he overcame alcoholism and the birth of the civil rights movement in Compton, California. It's an extraordinary episode. It's one that not only is important for everybody, I think in the Los Angeles area, it's really important for everybody around the world. So I would ask you to join me, sign up for our BHAG and help episode 62 with Judge Filer get to 1 million downloads. Now, before we continue with today's guest, I have to give a shout out and a huge thank you to my I shouldn't say old. I'm pretty sure you're younger than I am, but my dear, longtime friend, David Sheldon. David and I met, I'm going to guess at least 15 years ago. David is by way of background, he's a legendary designer and landscape architect. And I met him when he and I were both doing some work together. I was an advisor, and he was there full time at a amazing outfit in Los Angeles, an architecture firm called the Jurdy Partnership, originally founded by the late great John Jurdy, who I miss terribly. John's one of the greatest architects of the modern era, and the Jurdy Partnership is a wonderful firm. Anyway, David today is a senior executive at the Retail Design Collaborative and at Studio 111 Architects. And not only is he an incredible designer, he's got a gigantic heart. And he introduced me today to our guest, Tom. And Tom Bagamane is a wonderful guy. So thank you, David. I appreciate you introducing us to Tom and for setting today up. Tom is the founder of an outfit in Los Angeles, a nonprofit called The Giving Spirit. And Tom and his team of over, get this, 15,000 volunteers twice a year take these incredible backpacks that they create that are, if you will, a survival kit for the homeless people in Los Angeles. And they twice a year they go out and they deliver these backpacks that are really a gigantic blessing to homeless people around Los Angeles. Over 18 years, Tom and the Giving Spirit have helped over 60,000 people living on the streets in Los Angeles. And if that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. Tom is also the managing director of an outfit called Profitable Good. And so here's a guy who really has given his life on the charitable side with the Giving Spirit, and in terms of what he's doing today with Profitable Good in helping to make a difference. Profitable Good is a consulting firm that helps companies live their values, improve their culture, improve their business results by doing good for the world and the P&L at the same time. And so he's taken his heart and his wallet, if you will, and put them together in a consulting firm that helps other companies do the same. Tom has over 25 years of senior management experience in fashion, consumer products, retail. He's worked globally in business development, in traditional marketing, in digital marketing, in product branding, and manufacturing. He's raised venture capital. He's launched successful companies, two startups that he launched were acquired. And he's launched over 40 products into the world in one form or another. And he started his life off in the fashion business. And now Tom Bagamane is on Legends and Losers.
So I grew up in a household that was full of just, wanting to surround yourself with people and understand their lives and to give back to, the individuals that we brought in, but, to the collective communities that my sister and I were building with our friends. And so that started there. And then, when I got out into the working world, I started in the service industry, and, I was a consultant in the fashion industry for 10 years. And so I was designing, I at one point had a clothing line that I designed that had national distribution. It was pretty awesome as a kid, having that kind of.
What kind of clothes, Tom?
Men's high-end menswear. So suits and sport coats. And so I worked in DC where people wear suits. And so I had 700 very, very, very influential and powerful men from all over the world that would count on me to basically craft their image to their world. And so I was so successful at it that a major design house out of New York came to me and said, "Look, you know your customer better than we do. Let's go do some work together." So that was a blast to fly up to New York in your late 20s.
Yeah.
Work in the rag business. And
that wasn't any fun at all, huh? Being in Manhattan in your late 20s. No,
yeah.
That must have fucking sucked.
So
you were the king of the world, weren't you?
It was pretty cool. I mean, I remember Financial News Network, we got bought by CNN years later, did a piece on me, and called me, the top menswear consultant in the United States, blah, blah, blah. But the cool part was that at that time, airlines would syndicate these news magazines, and they'd show them, during the flight. And I remember my aunt calling my mom one day and saying, "We just saw Tommy on the screen." And
Tommy's on the airplane.
That's right. Wow, we didn't know that he did all that. That's really cool. So this was pre-internet. So that was fun. And it was fun being able to go into Michigan Avenue when my sister was at Kellogg at Northwestern getting her MBA, and walking into Mark Shale and then pulling a suit from the rack and seeing my name on it, in a totally different city than when I grew up. And I said, "Wow, I guess I did something okay." But the point I'm trying to make is I've been serving people for a very long time, whether it's delivering papers at 11 or taking care of.
You had a paper out, Tom?
Yeah, it was a Washington Post carrier, which was the job to have, when you're 11 and 12, 13 years old.
I delivered the Montreal Gazette.
Did you really?
Did you get those? I used to get these sort of line bruise marks on my shoulders because the bags were sort of shitty and they would sort of bunch up and stuff. And you'd get these sort of long, thin bruise marks, particularly our paper big day was the Saturday paper. And so like on Sunday morning, my shoulders were shredded. Did you get that?
Well, well, because you have to work for a real paper though, Chris. So I worked for the Washington Post, and so we had
Hey man,
padded,
Canada's a third world country. We don't have much.
we had padded straps. And the reason I remember that is I recently, my dad, unfortunately recently passed away. And so I was home for an extended period of time and kind of cleaning out some stuff. And my mom handed me my old Washington Post bag, and I brought it home. So now I go to the farmer's market with my Washington Post bag with its
Oh, wow.
padded straps. So
No,
I
our
didn't.
bags were really shitty. They were made out of this thin, it was terrible. It was nothing that would have lasted. Yeah.
I also, we had a Safeway that was 3 blocks away, so I also bogarted one of their shops. Don't tell anyone. Um, and I was able to use that, which was extremely important, especially on Sundays. Oh God, those papers were huge.
Huge papers, right? And did you have to put them together? You'd have to put
Yeah,
yeah.
the inserts.
So
Yeah,
you got to do all that, and then you got to go deliver them and stuff. And did you have to collect as well?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so again, that was my first foray of, accounts receivables,
Oh yeah, you learn that one really fast, right? It's like, if I want to go buy something, I got to go collecting.
Absolutely. And my mom still tells me, because she still lives in the same house I grew up in, that neighbors still tell her that I was the best paper boy that they ever had. And
Oh, how awesome.
their papers never got delivered, anymore.
I think it's such a bummer that being a paper boy or girl for that matter is not really, doesn't seem really feasible today for
I
kids.
know. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, for many reasons, but you're right. I mean, newsprint in and of itself is
Yeah.
going
Who reads
the way
newspapers,
of the
right?
dodo, right? Which is unfortunate because there's something really tangible about holding, data, and that's going to impact your life, in your hands.
Yeah. Or delivering what felt like 4,000 pounds of data
Yeah,
on the
one of,
weekend.
one of the coolest moments of my life. I'll never forget this. I I delivered. Remember, this is pre-internet, right? And pre-cable television.
I know I look incredibly young, but I do remember pre-internet.
Uh, I delivered the Washington Post when President Nixon resigned. And
Wow.
so I remember the night he resigned and then realizing that I was going to be a part of history. So I got up really early. Thankfully it was the summer and it was raining, but it was an August rain in DC. So it was a really warm rain. So I wasn't bad sitting out waiting in the rain, but I waited forever because they wanted to get every word right. And so the papers were very late. And so I waited for an hour, hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And they finally got there. And I said, man, my customers are going to be so pissed. And I remember I packed them all, they all got their own package, so they, not one drop of rain was going to get on them. Because I realized, how important this day was. And I remember it was an eerie silence in the neighborhood because no one had left. No one had gone to work. They were waiting for me. They wanted to read the paper. So I remember walking up to opening the front gate and walking down the walkway to the stairs, and people would come out of fully dressed in their suits, would walk out of the house, walk down the stairs, and come and like I was delivering the Torah to them, or
I
the
have
Magna
the
Carta.
tablets.
Yeah, right. And so the 10 Commandments and they thanked me, like they gave me a pat on my shoulder and they shook my hand. And I said, wow. And I was a little kid, right?
How old, what, roughly,
I
Tom?
was 12, 11 or
Yeah,
12.
okay.
And I thought, oh my God, wow. And I remember when I gave my last paper away and to my last customer, I walked really slowly home, kind of taking in the day. I think at that point I realized how important it was to be customer friendly and really treat your customers well. but to understand your place in history and to not take for granted, you know, your link in the chain. And so, and that followed me, you know, obviously in life. And so when I got into the clothing business, you know, I was successful because I cared for my people, and so they were extremely loyal, and they spent millions of dollars, literally, with me over the years. And it would never truly, I mean, of the thousands of transactions that I did, it never was, maybe 3 or 4% of it, they looked at their bill and they got, sideways. It was more, they felt like the confidence they felt because I cared more about their happiness and fulfillment than my own. They got that and they trusted me. So in essence, the bottom line is I made a lot more money, and I made my company successful for the right reasons, because everybody was a win-win for everyone. So
it's so awesome. And it's such a simple principle. My accountant, Greg Finley, has been my accountant for 20 years. And he's really the only reason I have any fucking money. And I don't consider him my accountant at all. I mean, he is absolutely my buddy. And we don't go drinking and shit together, but he's been with me for 20 years. And I have never, ever, ever looked at a bill. I don't give a shit what's on that bill. I don't care how many, I could give a shit. I trust the guy implicitly. He's done an incredible job for me. I only got audited once. He made me sign a power of attorney for him to represent me. I didn't go to a fucking meeting. I didn't sign a fucking form. I didn't do anything. He met with them twice. They said we were right, they were wrong, and that was the end of it. And so, anyway, I guess my point is, those kinds of powerful business relationships, I know that they loved you as much as you loved them, because as corny as it sounds, I love Greg Finley.
No, you're right. And I haven't been in that business for 20 plus years, and they still are, some of them are still my closest friends, and some of them still would love for me to come back and start something new with them. But again, that whole journey has served me well, and it made me again realize the power of relationships and nurturing them, and discerning what is the best scenario so everybody wins, and everybody prospers, because having a loyal customer is, and I'm not the first one or will be the last to know how important it is to retain the people that are loyal to you, because it's much more expensive to go out and get a new one outside of nurturing an old one. So could we just fast forward a little? I'm very curious how you get to this place of, I want to make a difference with the homeless in LA. So fast forward, business school, came out to LA. When I was in right before I left, went to grad school.
What'd you get your graduate degree in design, or?
No, I got my MBA in international transactions. Yeah.
How interesting! You must have the most fantastic brain. Right?
I hope so. Well,
you got an MBA, but you're a clothing designer.
Yeah. So
you don't get that very much, right? The creative type is normally, they can't even, they suck at math. They can't do shit. They don't have a business brain, or the opposite, right? So you're sort of ambidextrous that way, I guess.
Well, my undergrad's in journalism, so I was a writer as a child, and so I was a communicator as a child, and so that kind of that arts background, or that the communications background, compared with the financial discipline that an MBA gives you, made me a much better leader and a much better, more effective communicator to both my investors eventually, and then my customers too. But I didn't go back to school to get my grad degree until I was 10 years out. So I was successful in business, then went back to grad school. But before I came to LA, I was driving down 15th Street in Washington, and I don't know if you're familiar with DC, but 15th Street cuts across the major avenues, in DC. And I was coming home one night, and in the wintertime, and I drove down 15th, and I passed across Pennsylvania, which is the White House is to my right, and then the Treasury buildings to my right. So I passed that corner, look to the left, and I see all these federal buildings, and I see that it's the dead of winter, and I look at the steam grates that surrounds the federal buildings there, and I see a legion of homeless encampments around the federal buildings. Really bad air coming from the bowels of those buildings, but it's warm. And so those people are freezing, and so they went to sleep there. As I drove by them, I became incensed. And so I went home. My sister was back from business school break. And I looked at her and I said, what I just saw was a travesty. We call ourselves the greatest civilization in history, yet we can't take care of our own people. So here's what we're going to do. If you're willing, let's pool our Christmas money and let's go take care of these people. And without batting an eye, she said, absolutely. So we did. And we went and bought provisions at the local grocery store, filled some grocery bags with some of the things we still use today and distribute with. Went to the Army surplus store out in Manassas, grabbed some, good old Army blankets. And in the dead of night during the holiday season in December, when it was at its coldest, we would go around midnight, load up Dad's station wagon with blankets and with provisions, and we would find these people at all corners of the city and drape them with a blanket, put a bag of survival elements, food, drink, non-perishables at their feet while they were sleeping, and then ran off into the night. We didn't want them to. We didn't want to make this about us. We really wanted them to wake up comforted, fed, and realizing that the universe and the world, whatever they believed in, still cared. And there were people out there that would go to great lengths to make sure that they were being cared for. So
you wanted to just be a guardian angel and disappear.
Yes, right. And to this day, that DNA remains.
And is that still what you do in LA? Do you still do it that way?
So no, it's
because you're there's a lot of you doing this. It's a little hard to be
right.
Incognito. So I was trying to figure out how you pull that off.
So she went back to grad school. I continued to do this with some colleagues every December. And then I went to grad school in Virginia, and then I moved out here to LA for work. And so, so I came out here in 96. In 99, I was at a dinner and at a friend's house. And of course, everybody was congregated in the kitchen. And by that time, I had realized the depth of homelessness in LA made DC look like a walk in the park. And so that night I said, look, I'm a solutions guy. Homelessness here is out of control in terms of people really caring for these people. Who wants to join me? This is what I did in DC. I think we should do it here. I think there's a definite need, and who wants to join me? And 3, of course, girls raised their hands. All the guys sat there and looked at me like I was on Mars.
You're not implying that women are better human beings than men, are you?
Yes, they are. I am implying that. So those 3 ladies joined me, and I sent an email out to about 500 of my closest friends all around the world, and all of a sudden checks just started coming in. I had a small little business plan. I said, hey, I want to go raise money to help some people, and I'm going to go, buy some food and blankets, and we raised $2,500 in 2 weeks, and no 501c status. They just trusted me with their money, and we went and filled shopping bags full of provisions, and bought some disaster blankets from the same guy we still work with 18 years later. And we went out to the streets just on the west side. It took us 3.5 days to pack 40 shopping bags with stuff and take care of 40 people. 3.5 days. That was in 1999. Fast forward to where we are today. We had at our summer event, we just took care of our 45,000th client, our homeless friend in the street. And we did it with our 15,000th volunteer. So, which says a lot about our journey, but you do the math, that's 60,000 lives that we've impacted directly in 18 years.
Thanks for helping me with the math, Tom. Because people say to me all the time, "Oh, well, you do the math." No, I can't fucking do the math. But I digress. So 60,000 people. And so today the organization, twice a year, you go out and you give this incredible care package to these folks.
Correct. So that started in 99. And we still remain all volunteer. So we're one of the largest all volunteer organizations in the country. And we're still the largest all volunteer organization in the city. So no paid staff, no overhead. Every dollar goes right back to the street. But the key to our work, Chris, is okay. So we have a two-pronged strategy. One is we provide acute and emergent survival assistance to those in desperate need, the poorest of the poor. So these are folks that are desperate for their next meal, but also they've lost all hope. They've been abandoned by several aspects of society, from as base as their own families, but then the companies they trusted in, the armed forces that they decided to serve with, the families they married into. They were abandoned by 1 or 2, 3 or 4 of those different entities. And so they're about it. They have to look up sometimes to see bottom. So last thing that they need to do is to worry about basic survival essentials. They need to worry about just staying alive and trying to get to a shelter, or trying to get their self-respect and self-esteem back so they can get a job or interview to get into a shelter. LA is has the largest population of homelessness in the country by far. I mean, New York rivals us, but they have a law in New York where...
You don't know by chance where San Francisco sits?
It's in the top, I think it's in the top 10, but I think it's LA, New York, Boston or Chicago, Atlanta, I believe, is up there, and San Francisco is probably in that top 7, 8.
I'll never forget the first time I came to San Francisco. You know, I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and of course we have homeless, but nothing compared to, nothing prepared me in terms of my expectation to see what I saw when I came to San Francisco. And ever since then, I've thought, like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, this is the most beautiful city in the country, I believe. And certainly one of them, no debate about that, I think. And Northern California, I mean, where else in our country is more prosperous, or our world for that matter? Right. And so you just go, what to your point earlier, like what could be happening? And, you know, I could say very similar things about Los Angeles, right? And so you just go, how can this be?
Well, gosh, I've been asked that question so many times over the years, and you know, it baffles me. It has baffled me. That's why I started this, because I was confused. I said, you know, here, you look at our documents, our foundation documents of this nation. You look at the Statue of Liberty and what it stands for, and you know, and that's all being threatened right now. It's what we read every day. And so, but what's happened is the scab has been pulled off, and we realize that can be hypocritical at times, not only as a nation but as human beings. We say we are better than fill in the blank. We say that we are an evolved species, but for a nation that prides itself on being a first responder for injustice around the world, to not take care of their own and come up with excuses like, we're human beings, we're rugged individualists, that whole rugged individualism that made our country great. Well, sure as hell did. That's why my parents are a perfect example, and I am too. And my peers and my friends that I surround myself with, in terms of what they've done in life. Yeah, we're go-getters. We're solution people, but we also have eyes and a soul, and we understand that, and I'll use economic terms too, Chris, because it kind of plays into the bigger answer to your question. I mean, so I've been a capitalist and a philanthropist at the same time. I tell my friends, or when I'm being interviewed, it's like I'm a capitalist during the day and a philanthropist at night, and so, but it served me well. So in the 18 years since we started the Giving Spirit, I've started 4 different companies, and we've exited out of 3 of them. And so we're on my current consulting firm.
Were you happy with the exits, Tom?
I still need to work. So I mean, I'm not one of your next door neighbors up in the valley that can go out and sail.
I don't live in Silicon Valley anymore. I live in Santa Cruz. I'm with all the where wackadoo never takes a day off. I think that's our official slogan. My favorite, one of my favorite signs in Santa Cruz is a store on one of the main streets that has one of those old school signs, where you can sort of do each letter individually. And a couple of years ago on Thanksgiving, or on Halloween, the sign said, Happy Halloween, or as it's called here in Santa Cruz, Thursday.
That's pretty hilarious.
But I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. So I know I've had a lot of experience in navigating the waters, getting products and companies to market, and working and having interesting relationships with different groups of investors. I've worked for and with VC-backed companies and private equity-backed companies and sweat equity-backed companies. So I know the pressures that CEOs face every day because I've been one. And so I bring that to the table. But at the same time, I was an executive director, founder, chairman of what has now become one of LA's greatest nonprofit success stories in its history at the same time. So that crossover.
So I thought, I hate to interrupt you, but a lot of people say, okay, well, you make your money, you do your thing, then you retire, and then you try to do the kinds of things that, maybe do some giving back. You didn't do that. You didn't wait. I mean, you've been doing this since you were a very young man, and it just sounds like to me you've just been scaling it as you scaled your career, so to speak. Is that a fair way to think about it, Tom?
No, yeah, bullseye. Yes.
So why? I mean, look, when I was, a CMO and working 60 to 80 hours a week, I wrote checks, absolutely. And I took care of my family, but I didn't give of myself very much to nonprofits. I was totally consumed with my career, and so I felt good that I was writing checks to some good organizations, because I think if those of us who've been successful don't start giving back pretty quickly, then we're going to go straight to hell or somewhere. But I didn't do what you did, which is take a major chunk of my time and create an organization, and ultimately you've created a movement. I mean, that's an extraordinary thing. And so I guess my question is, where did that come from? I mean, obviously you have this massive entrepreneurial drive, but at the same time, you have this massive drive to make a difference, and you seem to have been able to execute on both.
I guess at some point in my life, early on, I saw the value of balance, and that I would be a better human being if I wasn't so wrapped up in my work, and if my work could profit more than one outside of my job, in a way that would encourage others to do the same, that it would build even greater value in terms of my own footprint in this world. And so there's that old adage of a CEO driving home, I forgot who it was, but very successful guy, had the perfect family and an incredible company that was growing leaps and bounds every year, and great team, great brand. Driving home one day, looked in the mirror and looked at himself and said, what have I created? What's the value in what I do? We, faster, better, stronger, tastier, that's all great, but what else is there? And he then realized that he needed to go out and find what his true purpose in life was. And it turned him around in terms of his business capabilities, but also made him realize that he needed to start doing what I chose to do much earlier, was build a parallel track where I felt that I could contribute to my investors and my employees during the day, but also to the greater good of man and womankind. I never knew it would get this big, Chris. I mean, we started helping 40 people, and but I guess going back to the premise of Legends and Losers, the losses. There are days when I go out to the streets and I realize, we've helped. So we committed to 5,200 lives this year. So we served 2,600. In the summer, we'll serve another 2,600 plus in December. LA's last census had them at about 50 to 60,000 that are homeless daily here in LA. So we only took care of 10%. So could that be considered a loss? In some optics, yes. And some days when I look at the person that we did help.
Do you see a path to, it's 60,000 you said?
Yeah.
Do you see a path to 60,000?
For what we do?
Yeah.
Not today, because we don't want to get to one of the great things about us is our grassroots appeal, how we make giving so accessible to the average Los Angelino. And we don't ever want to be considered too big, for people to volunteer, because you can go to these Thanksgiving is an amazing holiday for many reasons, but that's where the soup kitchens and the clothing drives, they get the most attention, where families do their most work, and they're overcrowded because, it's people feel like they're, and we don't want to be those kinds of giving events, because that people.
So how do you know who the 2,500 or 2,600 are going to be?
It's all random made.
It is.
So, yeah, but we've been doing it for 18 years, and so we know where.
You know where they are.
Folks are, and so. But we have a bifurcated strategy even through the year. So in the summer, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I'm sure we'll get back to some of these other things. But in the summer,
conversations with me are always at attention deficit theater. So I'm right there with you, buddy.
So in the summer, we focus on women and children in the streets, and so we work specifically with agencies that work with homeless teens, homeless families, homeless women, and we build survival kits that are summer oriented. So everything that you would need to survive in the heat of LA, which can be very searing on a day like this here. It's going to get in the 90s. Downtown, when you have no shade, it can burn the skin right off you.
Do you guys have, I heard this term that I don't remember hearing before, called cooling stations. Do you have cooling stations when it gets really freaking hot?
No, that's not our MO.
No, not you guys specifically, but the LA area.
I have not seen them. It's a good idea, but I have not seen them.
Apparently they take like gymnasiums or other sort of larger buildings and that have good air conditioning, and sometimes they bring in temporary piping and squirt, mist and shit. And I had never heard of it until this year.
I have no doubt that if they're possible to exist, they would. I mean, LA City Mayor Garcetti has been a huge advocate and patriot for the homeless cause, and so. But I haven't seen. We don't have them here on the West Side in Santa Monica or in Venice, so I haven't seen anybody here.
So Tom, what's it like? Take me to one of your days, and in particular. What's it like when you hand one of your packages to a homeless person?
So let me complete the thought.
Okay, sorry.
So of the summer and winter. So because I don't want to lose that track. The summer is focused on women and children in the streets. We also work with agencies, and so we will then send kids to we'll send families to the family shelters, women to the women's shelters, our women, our families, our children. And so they'll sit with their homeless counterparts and they'll learn and they'll talk and they'll understand where they came from. It's one of the greatest gifts we give our homeless friends is a re-engagement with their lives. You know, where are you from, Chris? You know, where'd you go to school? Do you have any kids? What brought you out here? Oh, okay. So you had a job. What'd you do? Wow, that's interesting. And so how long you been out here? You safe? You know, do you know your neighbor? I mean, they have been asked their name. Imagine someone who hasn't been asked their name for, I don't know, somebody didn't know their name for a day. I mean, when's the last time you go through a course of a day when somebody didn't know who you were, Chris? These people go weeks, months, years without being asked who they are because they've just been, so they slip through the cracks.
Because they're invisible. Absolutely.
And so, so the summer is, we do half in agency and then half in the streets with a random aid. So we train our volunteers. Obviously we have legacy volunteers, but the new ones, they go through a short training at the event, and then people will get in their cars, they'll load up some kits and they'll go out and we'll give them maps where to go, and they'll roll right up on someone at their tent and their box. And we give them the instructions on how to approach them. But
I love that you set the context that you're entering their home.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me why you think about it that way, when what that means if you're training me to go have an interaction with somebody? So
this is a good segue to talk to you about the second half of our mission. So the acute aid, everybody knows, and we get lauded and we're proud of the work that we do in terms of delivering survival aid for those who are on the brink. And we do it better, we believe, than anybody in the country. But the second half of this is where is our inflection point as an organization, and one we're just investing in over the last 18 months. We have been told countless times by parents, students, educators, leaders in the community that we're the best teaching tool of anything they've ever seen in the city of Los Angeles when it comes to teaching kids, families, individuals, organizations about social justice, entitlement, poverty, making the right decisions, lack of, using good judgment, kindness, fill in the blank.
So you're saying, for example, if I'm a 13-year-old boy and I maybe have a questionable looking future, let's call it that way, that if I get involved and go do one of these things, it's a wake-up call?
Yes, that's one of
that's one of the, in the tech world, we'd call that a use case.
Yes.
That's one use case.
I can't tell you how many times.
But it changes the volunteer in an incredibly profound way.
Incredibly profound way. So the children, these impressionable children who grow up in the entitled world of West Los Angeles, or Pasadena, or you name all the rich areas that surround the city, that are involved in the city, who are now thrown, we call it immersive learning. We immerse them in this environment where they're put into a very uncomfortable situation that they know nothing about, but they're forced to understand and learn about an individual in life that will then change the way they think about individuals in life when they are now given the chance to make decisions for larger groups of people, even for themselves. And parents have told me that they are being mentored up by their children. The children are sitting them down at dinner tables. So, Dad, remember those times you said that those homeless guys were shiftless and they should get a job? When we were out today, that guy worked at IBM. So have you changed? What's up, Dad? And the dad will go, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I made wrong decisions because I didn't know any better. I was ignorant and I was afraid. I was afraid of what I didn't know. And these parents are coming up and saying, thank you. my kids are teaching me that I need to be a better human being. I need to understand the world better.
And what are, you think, the big misconceptions about homeless in America or homeless in LA?
We all, including myself, I'm first in line, we all had these conceptions that became misconceptions about who a homeless person was, the demographic of a homeless person was. And that has changed immeasurably since we started. Everybody thought that they were mostly mentally ill, mostly elderly old men that were, drunk, or then it became on drugs. Then it became more African American, and they were not employable anyway, and so they were a drain on society. It is so far removed from that, Chris, to the point where it'll break your heart. There are more women on the streets than ever before. I think in LA it's up to 45% women now. That's a crazy number. Think about that. The most fragile of the species, on the, homeless, and a lot of them have children. So you put women with kids. So you have all of the nasty vultures that would want them for certain specific reasons to prey on them without shelter.
Do you know, Tom, what percentage of our homeless are under 18?
Oh gosh, nationwide, the national average is, I can't remember at this point, Chris. I'm sure I can get that data
Here,
for you.
hold on. Let's see. We can just, you keep talking. I'll see if I can pull it up as we're talking.
So by the flood of children that have entered homelessness, and a lot of that too is, Chris, when kids come out of foster care, they're termed out at 18. A significant amount, I think 40% of them end up homeless. And that is incredibly awful. We're taking our future and throwing them on the scrap heap. It's beyond me that. So, and with LA
so
being,
it looks like, according to the 2013 annual homeless assessment report on the HUD exchange, 23%, or 138,000, were homeless children under the age of 18, and 30% of sheltered homeless people were children, and 80% of unsheltered homeless people were over the age of 25. So 23% outside of shelter, and 30 in 2013.
Incredibly awful. I mean, 1/3 of
140,000 children.
Yeah, 1/3 of. Well, those numbers are way low too. 140,000. We know for a fact, LA census turned up, I think it was 54,000, something like that. We look at those numbers and laugh because we know, and our agencies tell us, but we know anecdotally just by walking the streets that those numbers are 20%, 25% higher.
So what's the reported number in LA?
I think it's between 40 to 50,000.
And what do you folks think it is?
Closer to 70, 75. Because again, it's hard for census takers to go into motel rooms and see 3 families living.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard for them to see an RV that's got 2 families in it. It's hard for them to check every car that has a sleeping person in it. They can't do it. It's impossible. But we see those people when we go to our agencies or we go out to the streets and see the density of the population and of the number of encampments that I think the number of encampments in LA have increased 65% over the last 3 years in every neighborhood, Chris. So imagine
we have an extraordinary problem here in Santa Cruz, Tom. I mean, we have, the tent cities. We have the whole thing. I mean, and our community bitches about it, but there appears to be no answer. I mean, and you're right. And listen, I'm not exactly not guilty. But, people here call them zombies. I mean, we got a lot of meth heads and, this kind of stuff. And they all get lumped into one big thing, right? And it's a problem here that people bitch about. And yet there seems to be very little progress. And so what the fuck do we do? I mean,
this speaks to this other half of what we do, and this is why I'm very excited about our future and expanding our footprint outside of LA. But
want to come to Santa Cruz this weekend? I got a nice place for you to stay.
I'm sure you do. And I'd love to see your wife cuss like a sailor. That would be that would be.
Oh yeah, but even better than the way she swears is the way she cooks.
See, now you got me. I'm on my way.
Italian.
Oh gee, I'm so there.
Oh God, she makes her own pasta and ketchup,
really?
and I mean it's crazy. She makes her own ketchup.
Dude, see, you're so blessed. See that we'll get back to that in a minute, but why I'm so excited about what we're doing and how we're morphing is that we are positioning ourselves to be a leader in education and awareness in the poverty space. What does that mean? I'm using business language. So we have such an amazing track record of being able to deliver results as an all-volunteer organization, and because I run it like a business. My board and my chair people are all executors and all successful businessmen and women. And so, but they all have bought into the idea and espouse and bleed the doctrine of, helping those less fortunate than themselves, and taking their bandwidth that they would give to their families or their businesses on a weekend or a weeknight and helping me lead. And we're only as good as the people that are around me, and I've got 100 people that are incredible and give their lives throughout the year to make this work. But what they are jazzed about, what we're excited about, is that we're now pivoting the entire organization to be a thought leader in the poverty space. And over the last year in our events, now we have breakout sessions that are education sessions where people come. We have powerful speakers and open dialogue about how to be conscious in today and the short-term solution that we provide with the acute aid, but how do we solve this long-term? What are the end games that we can all collaborate to make homelessness less of an issue or less of a byproduct of poverty?
And do you have an answer? I mean, if I said to you, "Hey Tom, solve homelessness tomorrow," and resources was not an issue, I mean, what's the solution?
A home. And that's not being I'm not being flippant. It's if you have a roof over your head and a lock on your door, you're safe. You have stuff, you can put stuff in it, you can eat in it, you can bathe in it, you have shelter from the elements, and you can be away from the noise that allows you to think, it allows you to make rational decisions, allows you to feel safe in your own skin. A roof does all of that. And you look at Salt Lake City and their model, they decided
I was just about to ask you, I will never forget, was it in the Wall Street Journal or maybe the New York Times, when I read that story, that they said they had this aha to give homeless people homes.
And it works. It's working big time. I mean, they have very little return back to the streets. I mean, one of the hardest things, Santa Monica, where I'm sitting right now, where our offices are, Santa Monica is one of the most amazing municipalities in the country, because they spend thousands of dollars to reacclimate a very large homeless population. And they're very big hearts in Santa Monica. It's a very liberal population, but it's also it's a huge commercial center for Los Angeles. And so there is a shared value proposition. So if they can make Santa Monica more accessible to people who don't, want to look at poverty straight up, then it makes it a better city to invest in. And so they've invested, and they have probably one of the highest tax bases as well. So
certainly an incredibly wealthy population.
Yes. So they can take that money and invest it in their people. And what they're finding out is it's not so simple as just giving someone a home, because as we've found out through 18 years, these people have lost their ability to understand what it's like to sleep on a bed. you look at some of the stories of assimilation programs, reacculturalization programs, where they'll put them in housing, and they'll come back like a week later, and they're sleeping on the floor. And there's a beautiful, well-made bed that's sitting there. It's so comfortable for them to look at, but they're so afraid of what that'll feel like. They have to be and I don't like using this word, but retrained, I guess, not to the norms that we take for granted every day. And so, how do we solve this? We put a roof over their head, and then we teach each other. I mean, we have lost our way for tolerance. And again, this is not a political statement. This is just the way it is, Chris. Look at the anger, the level of anger and the lack of civility that's happened over the last year. The way people are taking on issues right now, they're getting in people's faces, making things personal. They're going in and going after people instead of after the issues. And that's not who we are. That's not the better us. That's not the better self. That's not the better American. That's not an educated, enlightened, empowered American. This has nothing to do with where you went to school or how many years of school you had. This is just even street smart people know that if you treat people poorly, if you put them in a position where they can't succeed and you give them no hope, what do you want from them?
I'm trying to I'm trying to get to this. Okay. So if they all had homes, right?
Right.
So the number was 138, right? And you think that number is really low in terms of...
that's just kids. Those are just kids.
Oh, so what's the total number of homeless in the United States?
It's in the millions. It's like 2 million, I think.
Oh, fuck.
In the U.S. Yeah.
So the median house price is $190,000. So let's just say we built them all $150,000 home. Or what kind of a home do we need them to have? Or do they need to have?
They need to have, a home is, I'm sitting in a 200 square foot office space right now, maybe 250 square foot. You can put a bed, in this, and have a communal bathroom and a communal kitchen, and have a desk in here. And 9 out of 10 homeless people we meet would love to live in a space this small.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is a back of the envelope. Okay, well, because I once heard it said, any problem that can be solved with money is a great problem. So I'd just be curious. Okay, so let's say there's 3 million, would that be a fair number?
Yeah, I would say that 3 million is a fair number.
And to build a home that would be, a wonderful place that would work.
Understand a lot of these, because of the services that large urban environments provide them, will be in major cities. So the density of population, you'd want to build, multiple.
Sure. Apartment buildings, yeah. I mean, I grew up in an apartment building. I understand. Right. So I'm just trying to figure out what it would cost.
I haven't done the math, but
what's 75,000 divided times 3 million people? I can't do math, so.
Well, look at what California and LA have done. Proposition H here in LA is providing, $1 billion got appropriated through tax or bonds. I can't remember how it was being funded, but so the citizens of LA have stepped up and said, okay, we're going to pay for permanent housing. So they put $1 billion out there that's going to be spent over the next many years to create multi-unit housing all over the city to house the homeless. Triple H in California is providing even more money to address this problem. And so
I think the number is, tell me if this is right. I did 3 times 75 and I got 225, right? 225, excuse me. So that's $225 million to house 3 million people in a $75,000 home. Is that right?
Sounds right to me. It's not a lot. That's.
In the United States, shit. We lost that on, parties for the Department of I don't know what, right? Like, if I don't know.
I don't think that math is right, Chris.
No. So what's 3 million times
75,000 times
3 million?
Yeah, that's you're talking. I think it's got to be in there. I don't. I
Is it is
don't,
it
I don't
is
have a
it 2
calculator.
billion?
I think it's probably in the B's. Yeah, because that doesn't seem right. Because if it's 7 times 3 million, that's 21 million right there. So you're saving $75,000. So that's in the billions. Yeah.
So it's
So
2 billion.
so it's still a big number, but it's still a number that can be not easily. I want to be.
Yeah, but it's not an insurmountable
Not
number.
an
I mean, we
insurmountable
spend a
number. Yeah.
lot of money on other good things, and we spend a lot more money on a lot of bad things.
But let's talk about some of the roots though of homelessness too. While we're talking about this, is why again we're so encouraged.
Well, because the libertarian in me has a whole other conversation about homelessness. So yeah, let's go to that.
So
the grumpy libertarian, maybe I
right,
should say.
One of the great things that we do is we unmask, the homeless population to everybody, to libertarians, conservatives, liberals. It doesn't matter. We want people to encourage a conversation where there's an understanding. We believe that if more people, again, we're told, this is not just something that we have dissected in our own little lab. This is something that we are told constantly by our volunteers, that they've learned so much about the root causes of poverty than reading a journal or looking at data, by talking to these people, understanding. Remember that old adage of 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon or whatever that was. And I talk about this all the time when I'm asked to, is that we go out to the streets, we realize it's 1 or 2 degrees. We see, college graduates. We see, we met a double PhD from Berkeley last year. We met teachers and professors and doctors and people who have great jobs and who had great lives. I mean, a lot of military folks, officers, enlisted people. A friend of mine, one of our volunteers, was on Wall Street. He's a very successful tech entrepreneur, and was having lunch or breakfast, dinner, something with a vice chair or somebody high up in the Fed. And so they were having dinner, and Chad told his buddy what he had just done that weekend, which was to work with us a few Decembers ago. And this guy looked him straight in the eye and said, "You need to go back and tell your well-heeled West LA friends a few interesting tidbits." You go, here's the Fed. The Fed has access to every piece of economic data that we could ever want, right? I mean, they slice the apple so thin that it's transparent because they have to. They manage fiscal policy for the world, basically. So he said, "Tell your hoity-toities out there that the average upper middle class, not middle class or poor or fringe, the average upper middle class individual is 2 catastrophic events from being homeless." And Chad looked at him and said, "Were you kidding?" I said, "Think about it, pal. Divorce, lose your job."
Well, what about healthcare? I don't know about you, but I shit myself because I can't remember what the cap on my policy is, but do you know? I mean, most policies cap out at $2 to $3 million if you're lucky. You have a good policy.
Yep.
And so, God forbid you had to have like a gigantic, a horrible long cancer or heart transplant, you could blow through $3 million in the United States. I don't know, pretty fucking fast, I think.
Yep. So,
and now what, right?
Right. So you have no money to pay for your own healthcare. Let's say and then you're not working, right? So you don't have a job. And then what if you live in Los Angeles or San Francisco? Do you know what it costs to rent, and the average cost for rent in Los Angeles? So it's not just the rent for an apartment, it's a security deposit. So if an apartment costs $2,000, you need 4. to sign a
I
lease.
mean, I'm not an expert on what's going on in San Francisco by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know that $3,000 a month is a hard thing to get done, and you're going to have, of course, all kinds of roommates, and like $3,000 a month just doesn't really do much in San Francisco.
No, it doesn't do much in LA. So
And
you have
$3,000 a month, and here's the thing that most people don't get, right? You got to make $6,000.
to save $3,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so, but you go to think about it, and so I've done this exercise with hundreds of people about those two cataclysmic events, and they all get it.
So I just want to make sure I understand. We're all, if you say you're a, how did you describe it, Tom? Upper middle class is two catastrophic events from being homeless.
Absolutely.
A divorce, a disease or something, a loss of a job,
loss of a child. They have a mental health issue that's not getting treated. Mortgage crisis, right? PTSD. These are all real things that affect all of us. And when I say these things, Chris, and you walk away from this conversation, you're sitting having a glass of wine on the back porch tonight, ready for dinner. I guarantee you, if you think back to the people in your life, there's going to be somebody that either personally or a friend of yours or family said, we lost track of Joe. He lost his job and he was the life of the party. And, it was the, most likely to succeed in high school. And we heard that he was living under the railroad, tracks the other day. I guarantee you sit down, you'll know somebody. And that's, and here we are, these.
And I know a lot of people who got really, really, really close to that, and their parents brought them back in, or something lucky happened to them. But I know even more people who were like inches from that, and for whatever reason, somebody was able to save them. But
see, that's what a lot of these 3 million people don't have. They don't have that family parachute, that safety net, right? If you have that, a lot of those folks would not be homeless, right?
Yeah.
But we, again, what makes us strong sometimes makes us weak. This dogged individualism that we portray ourselves as being why we're such great, caretakers of this world, makes us blind to those that we should be taking care of ourselves. And this goes back to an economic equation. This is why, the second half of my life is I spend. So we have a consulting firm called Profitable Good Group, and so we consult CEOs, investors, boards on how to integrate social justice programming into their sales strategy. So we teach companies on how to make money and do good at the same time. It's a concept that's been getting traction over the last few years because of my background of being a successful entrepreneur and also being credible in the social justice space. I get doors open to me and to my colleagues because people know that I know where the stressors are on both sides. So I'm credible to the community. I'm not an opportunist. And I'm credible to the boards and to their investors because they know I've had to sweat P&Ls. So what we're trying to do is to change the way we think and buy and consume and to strategize and market ourselves, which plays into your sweet spot as an ex-CMO. If you can reduce the cost of customer acquisition, because every business is all about acquiring customers and retaining them, right? And no matter if you're in insurance, if you sell, iPhones, if you sell tires or cars, you want to acquire that next customer at the least cost and retain that same customer so they can buy again. So you scale, so your marketing dollar gets spent much more efficiently. There's not a better way to acquire a customer than speaking to their inherent visceral needs, and that's to say, look, by buying this, you will feel better about yourself, and we'll show you transparently how it affects the communities you live in, and we can remain profitable doing it. And that's a very, very simplistic way of communicating what we train in terms of our strategy, but it's way of basically taking the capitalist system and saying the weakest link in the capitalist chain is, capitalism in its purest form is strengthening the weakest link in its chain. So whether it's educating a specific segment of your consumer base to understand the value of buying your product. You invest in secondary education, so kids come out of school understanding that product is better because I understand the benefit because I've used it, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's been done a million times, different ways, but that's a way to take a universe, a underserved universe of people and making them better consumers, which then makes the profit line stronger, but also shows that you're a good corporate citizen. So that's.
And what do you think the average business can do, Tom, if they want to make a difference in homelessness?
That's too broad a question, Chris, because I mean, I think the average business can make a difference in an issue that the average business, depending on the soul of that business and the purpose of that, if that business is strictly, it's all about profit and shareholder value, which most businesses are, then there's an issue that impacts their user base that is important to society. They haven't maybe not have ferreted it out yet, but that if they were to then align themselves with impacting that issue on a level that was transparent, that was visible, that could bring in strategic partners within their supply chain, for example, to influence that base so it becomes instead of a drain on society, it becomes a positive influence on society. It will affect both their expenses. If they're raw materials, a company that needs raw materials and they go to an indigenous part of the world, which is downtrodden but has great cheap labor, if they increase the economic value of those areas to be better at their core employment, as well as educating those kids so those kids become better taxpayers and not a drain on society, that will lift society as a whole and lift the economics of that company's business.
So it's so interesting to hear you talk, because I don't know why, because I didn't go looking for this topic, but this topic of what's the role of an enterprise or a corporation in our world beyond profits keeps just showing up in my face. I don't know why this keeps showing up, but it does. And so it may be that we're getting to a time where people are really starting to think about, it's a big part of what we wanted to do, why we wanted to do Legends and Losers, is that there's no distinction between who we are at work and who we are at home. We're the same person.
Right.
And our motivations at work are our motivations in life. There's no motivations at work. There's just our motivations. And so I think as people begin to think about that, I don't have any data on this, but my spider senses are that more people want to do work that directly or indirectly, in a way they can see, makes a difference in the world. And that seems to be becoming more and more important. And how I see it is, I just shot a Legends and Losers with a venture capitalist named Tony Chen, and the whole thing, he just talks about wanting to make a difference and give back, and the guy's like a venture capitalist, and it's so interesting to me how much the mindset in business, at least in the entrepreneurial world that I live in, is combining, if you will, doing good and doing business.
And it's no accident. I think that you look at it, if you go on our website, profitablegood.com, you'll see we've done a lot of research, and we push a lot of data out, and we have a lot of white papers, and it's a great catalog for understanding where the research is going and showing that where millennials are. I mean, this whole population of leaders that are populating companies now and that will be running the world, over the next 50 years, they are purpose driven. They want to work for brands. They want to work for companies. They want to work for a segment that is not just about profit. They still want to make money, but they also want purpose in there. They want to know when they go to the office, like you said, the same person that's being fed at home and the things that I do, I want to be fed at work. I'm spending most of my time there.
Tom, as an entrepreneur, as a pretty much lifelong, from paperboy to today, entrepreneur who has somehow wonderfully managed to combine, doing well while doing good, if you'll allow that. What advice would you have for entrepreneurs who want to do the same, either directly in their business or outside their business, or a combination of both, the way you have?
Well, they should call me, because we can show them how. So that's how, you know. Yeah.
Now, I guess
But
that one was straight down the middle, huh?
that's right. Yeah, it's like, I was a baseball player, so I was told them hit them hard and hit them deep. So, uh, you know, Chris, it's simple. What we do is we encourage companies to, to understand why they exist, and so what is your true purpose in business? Paul Pullman, who took over Unilever many years ago when Unilever was not doing so well, it was flat. And here's, number one or two consumer products company in the world, depending on, if Procter & Gamble is having a good day or not. And so Pullman looked at Unilever and said, why are we floundering? Have we lost our way? And he said, what is our true purpose? What do we actually do? So Pullman had 10,000 marketing managers that he had access to. And he picked the best and the brightest and figuratively put them in a room and said, all right, don't come out of this room until you tell me what my purpose is. And so they did a lot of research. They did a lot of work, and they traced it all the way back to the origins of Lever Brothers. And Lever Brothers was a great soap company in the 19th century that families, men especially, because they were the ones that were working the most, would go out to the mines, the fields, the whatever, the manufacturing companies, and they'd get their hands all gnarly, their bodies covered with the worst shit you could imagine, and they bring it home back to their families and sit down and eat and share bread with their children.
With the asbestos and shit in their
Right.
fingernails, yeah.
And Lever Brothers said, look, no, use our soap so when you hold your child, or when you pass the bread, or when you kiss your wife, that you're not putting toxic stuff all over them. So as they were talking about this, I said, what does that mean then? So we were preventing these folks from what? Getting sick. And sick comes from getting a disease. And a disease can do what in the 19th century?
Kill
Take you out, right?
Yeah.
So they went back to Pullman and said, wow, our products save lives. And Pullman said, you got it. And so they took that philosophy and they extrapolated. And you're a marketing guru. They extrapolated that on all of their brands and said, how does our brand impact the quality of life of that end user? And let's extol the virtues of that from that baseline. It transformed the company. They profits, everything. And so they showed.
So really center your company on what matters to you,
but
and make that true north, right?
Yeah, to you, but also reach out to the end user. Ask the end user. So if you're a small and medium-sized company and you operate, in many communities around the country, localize your strategies. So, find out what's important in Des Moines. It's not going to be important in Detroit or Philly or Santa Barbara. Those communities have their own sets of issues that need to be addressed, but they can if you have real estate there, if you have a physical plant there, if you operate in that region, you're going to have strategic partners that either your distributors or your sales, that you can bring into this. All of a sudden, you've got this collective community that is putting their arms around the issues, but also putting the arms around the business and bringing people together to do more business, grow the brands, increase customer acquisition. So the CFOs are happy, the CMOs are happy, the CEO is happy because he's made the brand stronger, and the investors are happy because the valuation of the company has been increased by doing the right thing.
We have entrepreneurs here in the Bay Area, like Mark Benioff, particularly at Salesforce,
hero, yeah,
right? Who from the very beginning, 1% and the time off for people to go do good stuff and all of it, right? And then of course all his personal giving, but from a company point of view, you really look at what a Salesforce has done, and he's a hero.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. That's really cool.
The way he looks at things, his filter, that one, it's 1-1-1, right?
I think that's right. 1% of the time, 1% of the profits, and I don't know what the other one is.
No, I also 1% of product. I think they give away 1% of their product.
They give away their product. Okay, yeah, I think that's right.
But I think you bring up Benioff, and you bring up your part of California. I believe, I'm sure I'll get hell from, from your tech listeners, um, but it's because they know I'm right. The tech community in and of itself, the tech segment, is the most egregious uh, example of profits over people. When it comes to giving back, they're people who work there, make a lot of money, high margin. Their investors make a shitload of money.
But
But
you think tech companies are shitty at this?
yeah, I think they could use a good lesson in understanding. I mean, because tech companies, their human resources are their most important. Human resources lead to IP. So without IP, you're shit, right? And but that human resource will shift to other companies if they get poached by bigger dollars or more amenities. And so doing good is what a lot of these kids coming out of school want too. They want that some of their time and efforts being put into taking care of people. And so you remember all the backlash that San Francisco got, people throwing paint on the Google bus, and they're going to rich guys' houses and painting on their gates. It's because people see the money, but they don't see it going to the folks. I mean, look at San Francisco. You've got housing where people, lifelong legacy generations of San Franciscans are moving away because they can't afford to live in the city.
I think that's happening in a lot of major parts of Northern California.
And so you're going to start losing the things, the fiber that made the city what it is. And yeah, I know that there's
but the capitalist just says, hey, supply and demand, and it's a free country, and
right.
When are you going to have a cap on housing prices? And, que sera, get with the program, right?
Yeah, but at some point it does take a toll,
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just, that's what the sort of, I don't know. I don't want to put a particular label on it, but
what was that advertising campaign? I think it was an auto parts or an auto fix-it shop. It was a national chain. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later, right? What you just said is like, we'll take the money now and we'll push this off to another generation of folks. We'll just keep on kicking the can down the road for others to take care of, and we'll let the welfare system, let the welfare and the entitlement folks, kind of get involved. And but I you can't keep kicking this down the road. You can't keep kicking.
Well, and the thing that I find frustrating in our country and in our world is we can't just have a conversation. Everybody runs to their pre-existing condition of position, pre-existing position. Maybe I should say it that way. In that, so on healthcare, we can't say, okay, hey, let's have a conversation called when somebody gets sick or hurt. What do we want to have happen? Forget money for a sec, and just have a conversation. In our world, what do we want to have happen? Okay, great. How do we want to deal with paying for it? We can't. We just immediately go insane and start screaming at each other. And I don't know if homelessness is quite the flashpoint, but to me, it's a very similar thing, which is okay. So somebody gets in serious economic, social, or psychological trouble, and they end up on the street. What do we want to have happen? Like not some ideological bullshit conversation. In our world, what would we like to have happen? But we don't have that conversation.
No, and again, it speaks to what we discussed.
And we don't fucking know what to do. By the way, like in Santa Cruz, we have a whole bunch of homeless services and a shelter and this and that and a needle exchange and these things, and we are known for being quote unquote liberal on this. And so we know there are towns, won't name them, but there are towns who take their homeless and stick them on a Greyhound bus, give them some money, and send them to Santa Cruz. And it makes people in Santa Cruz crazy. And then they say, okay, well, the reason we get all this homeless population is because we do this shit for them. What we should do is we should take a really hard line, treat them like the quote unquote criminals they are. And that way people will stop putting them on Greyhound. And so, and it all just goes all round and round and round and round. And then fucking nothing happens. It's all the same. And it's such a frustrating thing to listen to. I guess my question, Tom, and all of that is, What do you think it finally takes to have a breakthrough in this kind of a discussion where we can authentically say, hey, when somebody's in this situation in our world, what do we want to do about it?
Two things. One goes back to, again, this inflection point, this pivoting that we're doing as an organization, educating and making people aware of what the root cause of homelessness or poverty or whatever, spousal abuse, you fill in your issue, is incredibly important. Having discussions in the community, getting kids to understand what it's like, to face these issues will go a long way to being preventative and a longer term solution. We can get in the way of some of these things from happening. The ripple effect can be stopped by a generation. A generation can stop this if they're informed. Okay, so that's one. The other is getting private industry to see the value in this in terms of their own interest, their own self-interest. Take the self-interest of capitalists and make it a part of what they do to make money. I truly believe even if you can show a CEO and a board that this one segment of a portfolio of investments that they make or revenue streams, if 1 out of 10 is a break-even investment, but it provides a huge return on the human capital that they either sell into or that they recruit and retain or want to, in terms of their own image and goodwill within their own population, it is a worthy investment to cover, for those 9 other entities, to cover that one profit center. Those are logical arguments that are not being made enough in boardrooms around the country. Who was it that talked about
the other thing, I hate to interrupt you, but the other thing that might make a difference in the particularly employment environment we have now, and you hear about it all in the tech world that I'm most familiar with, is how hard it is to get people, right? We're at 4% unemployment. And so, and all the comments you made about the millennials kind of waking us all up, I'm happy to take a dig at them every once in a while, but they sure are bringing a higher level of consciousness on topics like this. That's for damn sure. And so my point in that is, do you believe there's an argument that says you have a competitive advantage from a hiring perspective as a company if you are seen as a brand or a company that, per a sales force, that actually makes a serious difference in these areas?
Chris, you take it from me. Look at the data. Go on our site. Look at the data. It's not just. It's by far a huge majority of people would rather work. The millennials, okay, would rather work for a company that is driven by that. And not only with that, well, they'll pay more for a product, and they'll stay loyal to it. So, from all the economics around this, makes sense. It just takes.
And so that's really the big word you got to get out to businesses is like, hey, from a business point of view, from a spreadsheet lens perspective, this is good business to be a good company that gives back.
Absolutely. And
that's awesome.
But you got to show.
That's fucking awesome.
You got to show the ROI, and that takes time. It takes some effort, but it takes an enlightened CFO, enlightened financial mind to look and say, wait a minute, okay, if we stem let's say our attrition rate is 11%. If we cut it to 8%, oh my gosh, the cost of that 3% of people not leaving and not having to be replaced, especially if they're at senior levels,
right,
is a huge hit to our bottom line. A positive.
I think most executives get that. I think what they don't get is the connection to being viewed as a company that does good in the world to solving that. And so that's a dot that, at least from what I can tell, has not really been connected.
Well, again, all the data shows, I think it's above 85% of people will, if given a choice to pick in an apples to apples situation, they will pick the company that does good.
That is a good company.
And as an ex-CMO, you're looking for, right now, good is a great competitive advantage to have, right? But people are holding companies to be much more transparent as to the benefits that are achieved at the point.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs today are trying to walk or stand on the shoulders of the founders of Patagonia, and more recently that I just had the former CEO of Cliff Bar.
Oh wow!
And
Amazing
she's an
company.
incredible gal. And those kinds of companies, Cliff Bar and Patagonia and so forth, are so principled in the stances that they take in the world, I think. And and there's been lots, of course, over time. But it's interesting that now there's a level of awareness on this topic that, like I said, I just feel it all over the place. Now, I'd be remiss before we wrap, Tom, if I didn't ask you how you know our mutual friend, David Sheldon.
David and I have been good friends for a few years. We have collaborated on a little bit of work together, but he and his family have been volunteers for us the last couple of years. And David and Lynn and little Sadie have taken on the Giving Spirit as their cause célèbre, I guess. And,
how great is that?
And we even had one of our, so again, going back to the whole teaching model, we had one of our teens that has grown up with the Giving Spirit for the last 10 years come, and Sadie has a little school group that gets together every week to talk about life, and I think they get together. So one of our teens came in and sat with 6 or 7 young people, I think under the ages of 10, and had this great discussion about poverty and social justice. And so those kinds of conversations we are going to try to curate here in LA, online, virtually, and then take it on the road. But having those types of conversations where kids are teaching kids, where questions are being asked and answered, where there's an aha moment saying, wait a minute, if we don't treat them this way, if we can understand mental illness this way at an early stage, if we identify it, I'm saying, these things, maybe we can stem the tide of poverty, which then leads to homelessness. Because poverty is the root cause of all this. How do we achieve a better nation, a strong economy, by allowing more people to the table, right? And so, excuse me.
Bless you.
Sorry.
Bless you.
And so it always is. Societies have always said, it's about the kids. It's about young minds, and it's about influencing the future. And I think that and in the future, the kids meaning 0 to 25, if those kids hit mainstream leadership the right way, then we got a better shot. I'm constantly reminded when I go out to the streets with our families and seeing the kids have no fear and walk right up to someone and give this person who looks like they just crawled out from underneath a rock, disheveled, smelling like the worst stuff you can imagine, and just hugging them and seeing them both start to get emotional and laugh and then hear the story of how this guy was a dad and hasn't seen his kids in years, and how that touch has brought him back, at least for that moment, to understand that, hey, maybe my life is worth something. Maybe I should take that advice and go try to get into that shelter, and maybe I should live. You go on our site, you'll see this great story about a gentleman, an Army vet, who met us a few years ago on the streets, and we met him at one of our we just met him randomly on the street, and gave him one of our kits and asked him his name, where he was from, and he was this close to taking his life. He went from being suicidal to now working at a local grocery store, and he credits us for changing his life. And that was that's one of 45,000 people. I still can't believe that number. That still freaks me out.
Never mind the 15,000 volunteers, right?
And those are the only people we know.
Sure.
Affected. I guarantee you that's times 2, especially on the volunteer side, that they've influenced others in their life, and probably more than that. The stories are endless. We have my mother walked up to me one day and said, "You're not going to believe this, but my oldest is applying to college, and my youngest is applying to get into this prestigious high school, and they're both writing their essays to get in the schools. And and randomly and separately, they're both writing about their experiences with youth. And they both got into all the schools they wanted to get into. And that, my work is done. If I've been hit by a car in my life, so I've got, issues so I know what that feels like. But that was 2000.
I bet it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks a lot. But I could have been killed that day, but God kept me alive, and it was for this. It was for this conversation that we're having. And so, but if I get hit by the proverbial next truck and I don't survive it, then I'm okay.
I think you're one and done on that one. I think you're not.
But my legacy is set. Because I've created an organization and a movement that you said that will live on way beyond me, and it's much bigger than me, because it's being taken to the streets by our future and by men and women and kids that know that the key to being a long-term solution is asking why, and then figuring out where all the other pieces fit, and bringing people together for a solution, and not pointing fingers and walking away. I could have done that years ago and said, somebody needs to take care of that person. Why should it be me? We only took care of 40 people that day. Now it's going over to 40,000. And so it just shows that, you don't have to feel like a loser because you can't take care of 50,000 people in one fell swoop. But if you take care of one, who knows what it'll lead to? And that's that's what continues to drive us and our volunteers. And it makes me hopeful that even as negative as we are in the dialogue we're having as a nation and with the world right now, that we're still great American people. That the culture that we crafted, as bruised and battered and as scarred as it is, the under the primer is an engine that still exists and lives in the people that I see and the people that I work with and people like you that want to get the word out to people. And I think as long as there's still that dream and ideal that can be reached and achieved through the work that we do to make it accessible for people to understand that you can make a difference, then we will.
Yeah, and I also think, Tom, there's a equal and hopefully greater opposite reaction to sort of the climate that you describe. I have noticed, at least in my own life, just a modicum increase in kindness. So I don't know if that's just around me, but and particularly amongst people of different races and different persuasions or differences, that people in the elevator are a little bit more friendly, and people are a little bit less bitchy at each other at the airport. And it may just be the world I'm in, but I think there are definitely many amongst us who are trying to exhibit behavior to counteract some of the negative and racist and hatred that we've seen. Even with the police, when a cop drives by me now, I flash the peace sign. They put their lives on the line. I have friends who are cops, and look, I'm not saying that bad things haven't happened, but I'm just saying, like Rodney King said, can we all just get along?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
No. Again, that you're speaking exactly to what I think we're saying the same thing. I mean, I think inherently we're a better country than this, and we know that. And
I think a lot of us are trying to behave really, really well. I'm trying to do, my wife and I have had this conversation a lot lately, which is, yes, we write checks. Yes, we do charitable things. Yes, we donate some time as well, et cetera. But who are we on a day in and day out basis? Not so much from a charitable point of view, but like just who are we being in the world? Can we make other people's lives better just by us being in the world? And even if that's at the grocery store, by being friendly.
Yeah. And that's so important what you just said, Chris, because it doesn't have to be, you don't have to create a foundational organization, a landmark movement.
No, I went to Target yesterday to pick up our prescriptions. And at the Target here, They have, I don't know how they technologically do it, but they have some kind of a technological barrier that when the cart gets to some spot, it won't go past it.
Right. Yeah.
And assholes fucking just take it to that spot and then just
Leave
pile
it.
them up.
Right.
And shit like that drives me crazy. I'm somebody who takes that cart and puts it back. I'm the person who picks up the piece of shit on the
Right.
sidewalk on my street and puts it in the garbage because I don't want trash in our neighborhoods. Anyway, so the other day when I'm at Target, you know, the kid that does this for his summer job, I'm guessing, is like, you know, he's got 4 or 5 of them, and he's kind of wrestling with one that's kind of jammed into a bush. So I grab the other side of it, and we pull the fucking thing out, and we jam it in. And the first thing I said to him, I said, "What is wrong with people?" And he said, "People are fucking terrible." You know, we just start going off, right? It's like, so we had this good little bitch fest, and you know, I helped the kid fucking put his grocery carts back, right? And it's like, how hard is that, right?
It's not. It's not. And again, I think, again, this goes back to why I'm really encouraged about what we're doing with the Giving Spirit, especially, is that if we can inspire conversations like this at dinner tables, at breakout rooms, at lunch tables, at, you know, corporate retreats, at campfires, you know, at churches and synagogues and temples, mosques, you know, just sitting around saying, you know what, you know, instead of pointing fingers, instead of like saying, you know, this is what's wrong with this, is there's a solution here. Let's just find one solution that we can all agree would be kind of cool to have, whether it's going to you know, to that lady next door and mowing her lawn because she's, you know, she can't get out. Let's just do that so we can feel good about ourselves, and who knows what that'll spawn. And it just, when we have to get back to those kind of basic, you know, just roll up your sleeve and put up the barn, you know, like they
Yeah.
did in the old days. You know, let's have a barn putting up or standing up party, and the whole neighborhood to get together and put up the flipping barn for the farmer that needed it. And so, you know, getting back to those, I think would serve us well as a nation. And that's what we do now. That's what we do here. That's why we don't want to be a factory. We want to be a grassroots.
I am my sister's keeper. I am my brother's keeper, right?
Yeah. And that can happen, you know, and it can happen in business. It can happen in politics. It can happen in communities. It can happen on the playground. And it should be happening in college campuses. That's, you know, that's the seedbed of where all great things are going to happen. And we're encouraged by, I mean, we have a great partnership with UCLA. They adopted us years ago, and they said, you're a perfect partner, because we want to make UCLA the #1 community service university in the United States. And they're fast on their way becoming that. And
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
but that's
Well,
California. We also live. Remember what Jerry Brown said when, after the last election, he said, "Yeah, we'll build a wall. We'll build it around California. We'll build it around California." And you and I live in a great state. I mean, I look at the flag behind you.
I do love it here, man. And as Fernando Valenzuela said so many years ago, America has been very, very good to me, and California has been very good to me. I look, our little town, you know, last night, my wife Carrie and I went and had dinner with some friends just at a local restaurant, and we're looking around, and you know, there's the ocean, the sailboats are out, and redwoods and palm trees, and you just go, I'm growing up I'm growing up in a movie set. I didn't even think
Yeah.
any of this shit was real. When I saw that shit on TV as a kid, I thought it was like Disney World, like some manufactured thing. Like you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And to your point, there are a lot of incredible people here, man. Wow. People who give a shit,
Yep.
people who give back, people who innovate, people who create. You know, some of the greatest creators and innovators in any domain, not of course just business, in the modern era, are either from here or came here to do their thing. So it's a very special place for a lot of reasons.
No, and so we need to be a catalyst for the rest of the nation. You know, it's like, you know, we should be positive, and we should fight, you know, tooth and nail to make sure that that good, wins the day, and that means good business, and it means, you know, the way we treat each other. All of that works. Like you just said, enough. Let's have a dialogue. Enough combativeness. You know, let's let's work collaboratively for a solution. I mean, it doesn't have to, you don't have to save the world. Let's just do it one individual, one issue at a time. And you'll see the snowball effect of that. I mean, we're a perfect example of it.
Well, Tom, I can't thank you enough for your time, but more importantly, for just being who you are in the world. I mean, 60,000 people, 45,000 of whom are living in the streets that you've made a difference to. And I know many, many more thousands of them going forward, and having both combined your business and your life outside of your work to make a difference is fucking awesome. And so, you're an inspiration, and I appreciate Mr. Sheldon putting us together, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for giving us this forum and reaching out to me as well, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I still believe in the good of people and the good nature of the American people, and we'll keep fighting the good fight as long as you're there beside us.
Well, you sure are a legendary man, Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris.
We'll speak soon.
Peace out. You got it.
Whew, Tom. Wow, what an amazing guy. I know this sounds corny and silly, but you make my heart sing. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your generosity with us and for everything you do in the world. If you know somebody who would be inspired, motivated, excited, and turned on by today's discussion with Tom Bagamane, why don't you share it with them right now? Want to remind you, One Life Fully Lived, we're going to be in Sacramento in October 21 and 22. Come and visit with us. We've tried to make this as cheap as possible. We're a nonprofit trying to help people live, plan, and dream their best life. My mentor, dear friend, Bix Bixon's going to be there with his son, Joe, an extraordinary duo who are future hackers. We have got an incredible lineup. You can go check it out at onelifefullylive.org. Of course, I'll be there, and I hope you come visit us. I also hope you go to legendsandlosers.com and subscribe to our email list. We will not spam your ass. We will not sell your name to anybody else or do any other stupid, nefarious shit. But what we will do is keep you informed with all the good stuff we have going on at Legends and Losers. All right. We would like to thank the givingspirit.org, serving Los Angeles homeless since 1999. Please do what you can. HarperCollins Instant Classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Equity Directory, connecting startups to the talent and resources they need to build a legendary business. NetSuite, #1 in cloud ERP. Check us out at netsuite.com. OneLifeFullyLive.org. Hope to see you in Sacramento. Mint Systems in beautiful Santa Cruz, California. Green buildings that make money at mintsystems.com. Atira Systems, when fire strikes, our strong water technology saves money, lives, and the environment at atirasystems.com. Pursuingresults.com. They produce legendary podcasts, and they produce this one too. Check us out at pursuingresults.com. Interview Valet. If you're a thought leader and you would like your thoughts to lead in the world, get your ass on some podcasts and make a difference at interviewvalet.com. Bixon 2. Coaching business leaders worldwide to hack the future and produce the material outcomes that matter. And a book we love, Dushka Zapata, our multi-time guest's most recent book, I'm not sure if this is her most recent one, but what the hell? How to Be Ferociously Happy and Other Essays. Check it out, Dushka Zapata. We must remind you that this oddcast is a sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love it if you shared the shit out of it. All rights do remain disturbed. We must warn you that Legends and Losers may cause random acts of legendariness. This oddcast is also produced in a studio that does contain nuts, clearly. Listen to David Bowie. Be nice to your mom. Johnny Cash was right. Eat peaches. Support your local homeless charity. If not us, guys, who else? Thank you, Candy Dandy. I love you. This podcast really ties the room together, doesn't it, Colin? And our deepest apologies go out today to Bill McDermott, Chief Executive Officer of SAP. Sorry, Bill. We just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Be legendary, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.